start recording. Okay, so the couple things I want to cover today. I know that we are going through our CPC review presentation right now, and we're going through the modifiers, and we're talking about when to use them, why they're important for the exam. And I just want to make sure that you guys know where your modifiers are, right? So conveniently for your CPC exam, they're in two places. They're in our CPT books and our HCPC books. That's my little cheap modifier book. Okay. So, in our HCPC books, right? And so your CPT book, it's really cool. One of my favorite things about it is that it has this little cheat sheet at the very beginning with all your modifiers, well, most of your modifiers, and including your HCPC modifiers too. So that's really cool. But this is really, you should know that already, so this is really what I want to talk about. So you have your modifiers tabbed. And they're in Appendix A in your CPT book. And you know these wonderful blank notes pages that are in your CPT book? These are for writing notes in your book that will help you with everyday coding and passing your certification exam. And so it's a really good idea to understand your modifiers. And when I took my exam, I had examples written next to each modifier if it was tricky, and tips and tricks on what to look for. So I think that that's a really good idea for you guys to do too, is to make sure that you are writing notes in your books and you're utilizing these pages, because there will be questions on your exam that are really complicated, right? The CPT questions can get really, really in-depth and really tricky. And, you know, the difference between two answers could be the modifiers only. And so you need to know when it's appropriate to use them and also when it's appropriate not to. So the first thing I want to show you guys, hopefully you guys can see my screen right now. This is the coding spot. This is the codingspot.com. And I want to make sure you guys are using the current students portal. So because this is being recorded and going on YouTube, I won't just throw the password out there. But if you need the password, just reach out to Elizabeth or myself, and we'll make sure that we get that to you. And if you are not a student, you can also reach out to us to become a student, or we can answer any questions about a career in medical coding. Okay, so I just logged into the current students portal. We have our 2017 tabbing of the books using the Medicare Preventative Services. We have a bunch of 2016 tips too, and we have all of these great PDFs. So every once in a while during one of these Webexes, I like to just go back and make sure that you guys know where the resources are and how to find them, because there's a lot of really great stuff on here. So I want to just go down, and I'm just going to scroll down to modifiers. So we started adding little cheat sheets on modifiers, and I'm going to go ahead and open this first one, and then I'll show you guys where to find it. So for modifier 25, this is a CMS MAC. So the CMS, the MAC for CMS for Arizona is Noridian. And if you don't know what MAC means, it's the Medicare. It's basically the Medicare administrator for Arizona. So it's broken up into different jurisdictions, with Alaska, Arizona, Idaho, Montana, North Dakota, Oregon, South Dakota, Utah, Washington, and Wyoming being in one jurisdiction, right? And then there's another jurisdiction with other states. So for Arizona, our jurisdiction is jurisdiction F, and that is Noridian. So Noridian is a fabulous site. I like it a lot. I like it almost, I was going to say almost as much as the CMS website, but that's a lie, because the CMS website is all of a sudden phenomenal. So, but I do like it. This is one of my favorite parts about the Noridian website, is the modifier sheets that they provide and the modifier tips. So they don't have all the modifiers listed on the Noridian site because Noridian is for Medicare. So if there are modifiers that Medicare doesn't use, or if there are additional modifiers that maybe Medicaid uses or a private payer uses, those won't necessarily have a tips sheet. But for all the ones that do, we're going to upload them into this portal. So you can download them at any time. The whole point of all this is these are the types of things that you should write in your book. Of course, you're not going to write this whole page in your book, right? But if a modifier is confusing to you for whatever reason, then you go to the PDF, Modifier 25, and it's going to break it down to you in a little more depth than your book does. It's going to give you the correct use and the incorrect use. So Modifier 25, for example, indicates on the day of a procedure or other service the patient's condition required a significant, separately identifiable evaluation and management service above and beyond the other service provided or beyond the usual preoperative or postoperative care associated with that procedure that was performed. This modifier should be used if an E&M is being billed on the same day as a procedure. This is also one of the most misused modifiers and the most audited modifiers. So if you're in your Appendix A in your CPT book, we see Modifier 25, and it tells us significant separately identifiable evaluation and management service by the same physician or other qualified healthcare professional on the same day of the procedure or other service. And then it breaks it down. I won't read it out loud to you, but it notes here, this modifier is not used to report an E&M service that resulted in a decision to perform surgery. See Modifier 57. For significant separately identifiable non-E&M service, see Modifier 59. So our book is giving us all of these great tricks and tips, right? But, we can always use a little bit more. So here we find out the correct use and the incorrect use. So the correct use is giving us an example here. The modifier may be used to indicate that an E&M service or eye exam is performed on the same day as a minor surgery. So in our global surgery days, which are also in our CPT book, we know our global package or global surgery for minor surgery is 0 to 10 days. So if there's something that occurs in that global surgery package, that's what they call it, the global surgery package. If there's something that occurs during that period, it has to be, if it's not related to the surgery, it has to be designated. So you would have to attach a modifier to say, hey, we're billing this separately because it has nothing to do with the surgery, although it happened within this global period, right? So you would attach Modifier 25. Another correct use tip is documentation in the patient's medical record must support the use of this modifier. It can't just be attached. As coders, we have to see why was it separately identified, why was it significant and separate from the other procedure. So very important tips. And this modifier should not be submitted with E&M codes that are explicitly for new patients only. So, okay. I think next to my Modifier 25 in my CPT book in Appendix A, I would write not to be used with new patients, or just a little tip. I used bullet points and just little tips. And my CPT book that I tested with was marked up like you wouldn't believe. I mean, I marked it up in pencil because I was like, okay, it had to be perfect, right? And so if I messed up at all, I would erase it. It was a little bit crazy. So, but I actually have students now that are a little bit crazier than I was. Like, I thought that I over-tabbed everything, but I have one student, she is phenomenal, but she is a massive tabber. But you should see her get to the sections in her book. It's like, so, whatever works for you, but it's better to have it than not have it, right? Okay, so incorrect use, a physician other than the physician performing the procedure. So this is pretty much self-explanatory, right? Because it says that in the actual definition of Modifier 25, it says by the same physician or other qualified healthcare professional on the same day of the procedure. But that's a good point that it's calling that out, because those are important words to look for when you're reading, you know, a case study, or you're reading a date of service. It's important to look for those type of words. Is it a physician other than the physician performing the procedure? Because that is an incorrect use of Modifier 25. So another incorrect use, and this is a little bit tricky, is documentation shows the amount of work performed is consistent with that normally performed with the procedure. So if there's nothing separately identifiable or significant that is documented, you know, you wouldn't use it. You wouldn't use it. That would be inappropriate. That would actually be unbundling to get more money. And that's why, as you can imagine, that it's one of the most audited modifiers, and it's also one of the most overused modifiers. I've seen personally this modifier used to unbundle codes that should actually encompass each other, and you know, that would be considered fraud. So it's important that you understand what Modifier 25 is and when it's appropriate to use it, especially as a coder. If you are working in a provider's office and say you're doing a preventative service visit on a 8-year-old, or the provider is, and you're coding it, and so you would be coding that preventative service visit, right? But say it's a sick visit as well, which happens all the time. So you go into your doctor for your regular visit, especially like as a kid, and you have a sore throat, or your kid has a sore throat. So say I take my 15-month-old Nolan Ryan to the doctor, and it's for his 18-month visit, right? And he is just going to get his shots or whatever it is at that visit, and he has a terrible sore throat and a cough. Well, the provider, for a preventative service visit, it's free. There's no copay for me as the patient, and it is required that the provider will be billed by either the insurance or Medicaid, depending, you know, what kind of insurance I have, or Medicare. But I won't have to pay a copay as a patient. So if the provider treats that sore throat in Nolan, then he needs to tell the payer, the insurance company, that this is separate from Nolan's shots and well-child checkup. It's completely separate. So not only did I do this well-child checkup, but this Nolan had a sore throat, and I gave him a strep test, and I gave him some antibiotics. And so here's my preventative service visit, my preventative service E&M visit, and here's my regular sick visit with a Modifier 25 attached to indicate that it was completely separate from this preventative service visit. And when that happens, the provider will get reimbursed for both. And also, I will be, as a patient, required to pay a copay for that sick visit. So it's really important from a provider perspective to know when to use Modifier 25 and to use it correctly, so you get what you should be reimbursed for. And also, it's important from a patient perspective, because you might have expected no copay, and now you have a copay. And then it's important from a payer perspective, because you need to make sure that this is truly a significant and separately identifiable visit, and not just unbundling or fraudulent use of coding. So Modifier 25 is really important. Another thing that I love about these Noridian examples is it gives us actual claim examples. So a claim example here is: the patient was seen to close a wound due to a motor vehicle accident, 12032. So it's giving us that CPT code. And so that CPT code, if you look it up, right, you could just go to your section. So 12032, right? It's in your surgery section. 12032 in your CPT book is repair intermediate, and it is 2.6 centimeters to 7.5 centimeters. So it's a repair, and this is a whole nother Webex, but you can sum of links of repairs for each group of anatomic sites. So you really do have to pay attention to your wording for each of your code descriptions, but that's another whole nother Webex. So anyways, layer closure of wounds of scalp, 12032. And on the same date of service here, E&M visit to verify neurological injury, 99212, 25 attached. So we have our repair, our surgery from the motor vehicle accident to close that laceration of a scalp. And we have our 99212, our E&M code, with a modifier attached to it to signify this is separate than this wound repair, right? And so if you go into your CPT book and you look up 99212, it is an office, it's an established patient, so it's not a new patient, right? Which was our little tip that we were going to write in our modifier section. 99212, it's an office or other outpatient visit for the evaluation and management of an established patient, which requires at least 2 of these 3 key components. So it's one of our five established patient E&M codes that we would choose from. You know, and those established patient codes go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, depending on severity. So it's a level 2, and we attach that modifier 25 to ensure that we get paid for both, right, as the provider. So that's an example of modifier 25. So we will have all of the modifiers that are Medicare related uploaded onto the coding spot for you to download. But I also wanted to show you where they are. So, you know, when I became a coder, my first coding job, I was just like coding, and I was really boxed into this certain coding area. I did HCC RAF coding, and I loved it. Don't get me wrong. It was a great first job. It was phenomenal pay. I worked from home. It allowed me to work from home and not put my kid in daycare. And I mean, it was just a phenomenal first coding job. But I was really boxed into a corner. It's just one type of coding. And so, you know, I really wanted to learn more about other types of coding. And so I started doing a lot of research. And I had an amazing mentor while I was at that first coding job too, who really encouraged me to, you know, investigate and learn about other types of coding and why things were the way they were, not just the actual code. Like, why was this code the code? So I was really grateful, and I am really grateful for that experience. But one of the things it allowed me to do was to really learn about coding, and I found such great resources in the last 10 years I've been doing coding. So Noridian I didn't know about right away. It took a while before I became really familiar with CMS and their MACs. And so, long story short, which is just impossible for me, here is the Noridian website. So let's see, I'm just going to go ahead and show you from the very beginning, just in case. Oops, sorry. So Noridian Medicare, you can just Google Noridian and it will come up, right? And you might forget what jurisdiction, if you're in Arizona, you might forget what jurisdiction you're in forever, because sometimes I still have to look it up and I'm like, oh my gosh, I picked jurisdiction E when Arizona's jurisdiction F. So I'll just show you really quick the difference, right? So jurisdiction E, California, Hawaii, Nevada, American Samoa, Guam, Northern Mariana Islands. So obviously Arizona's not on there, right? So let me just back out. Oops, I backed out too far. Okay, so jurisdiction F. So remember, Noridian is our MAC for Medicare in Arizona. It's our Medicare administrative contractor. So we'll go ahead and go into our jurisdiction F. Just like the CMS website, just like the World Health Organization website, there's so many resources out here, and these are from resources that are, these are approved resources. These resources are approved to use for coding references, right? So there are some resources out there that you know, they could just be somebody's webpage or you know, a blog, or, and those are great resources, and it's great to get different information from those websites. But obviously, like the World Health Organization and the CMS website and the CMS MAC websites, those are going to be websites that you can reference for, you know, for coding guidance. And you can also, you know, you can also take what is said there as pretty much the law. Okay, jurisdiction F is taking quite some time. That's why I should have just had it up. Let's see if I can get there really quick another way. Oops. This works sometimes. I know it just seems like it wouldn't, but it does. But maybe not today, and we don't have a lot of time left. Okay, so we'll just kind of wait for that to quit thinking. And so we showed you modifier 25. Let me go ahead and show you modifier 22. Again, you know, these are taken directly off of that Noridian website. So what is published on there, you would use that for coding reference no matter what coding job you're in. So when I worked for one of the, probably the biggest hospital out here in Arizona, we had a list of resources that we could use and a list of resources that we couldn't use. So approved resources, right? And so we'd have to link everything that, like if we were asked a coding question and we responded, we would have to link our reference, and it would have to be from this list of coding resources. And it was a lot smaller than you would think it would be, but definitely Noridian and CMS were our top two. And you know, those are the guidelines that we follow. So, okay, so here it is. See, so we logged into jurisdiction F, right? And here we can see Alaska, Arizona. So we know we're in the right place. So I just want to show you guys. So they release publications all the time. They're always, I should have known that the internet was too slow. They release publications all the time, and they're always sending out tools and tips. And so it's a great website when it's working. But I did see a little note earlier that said that they would be updating it. So maybe that's why it's going so slow. Yeah, interesting. Scary. We were just on it. So let me see if I can just go right back to our, okay. So if you were to go to that Noridian website and you were in the search box to type modifiers, the modifier list would pop up. And like I said, it's not all inclusive because Noridian is a Medicare MAC. So they're really sharing information about Medicare. And so that's important to know. But it's also, I mean, most of the modifiers can be used across the board. So there might not be some that we use that are on this site. There are some of them are not on there that we do use, but the majority are. And so this is a great place to, like, I pulled up those PDFs from the coding spot. It's a great place to really just know your resources. And so if you're struggling with a certain area or you're struggling with a certain modifier, you'll have this portal to pull down the PDFs, but you can also go to sites like Noridian at any time and see what they say about them. And it's really, they're really smart. You can pretty much search for what you need and you will find it. So I can't believe it's 7:30 already. Okay, let me hop back to modifier 22. Modifier 22, increased procedural services. So, and this is a good modifier to look for keywords. So, increased procedural services, documentation to indicate that the work performed to provide the service was substantially greater than typically required. These are good words to look for and to write next to modifier 22, like that can kind of call it out for you. Increased intensity, right? So extra time. It was more difficult than anticipated. The severity of the patient's condition. Documentation includes separate paragraph titled unusual procedure. That's most common. And again, all of these tip sheets for these modifiers include correct use and incorrect use, which I love. I love the incorrect use because it kind of, gives you examples of when you wouldn't use it that obviously people have used this modifier for, so we don't have to make the same mistake that others have made. Do not use it, like, for example, incorrect use. Do not use generalized statements such as surgery took an extra 2 hours. This was a difficult surgery for an obese patient. So those aren't significant enough for us to know that this was increased procedural services and I should be paid more. It really has to be documented, and we don't have to assume as coders anything, and we don't assume as anything. If it's not documented, it didn't happen. From a coder perspective, if it's not documented, it didn't happen. From a provider perspective, if you think it, you better ink it. If it's going on in your brain and as a provider, it's your thought process and it's affecting treatment, you better write that down. You better document it. Because if you don't, then you don't get credit for it, equals you don't get paid for it. So reach out with any questions, please. These 3 are up right now, and we'll keep adding more. So please make sure that you download them and you're writing little modifier tips in your modifier section of your CPT book. We were still going through ancillary modifiers in our review, and we'll pick up on that next week. Ancillary modifiers, and 26 and TC are the most common, but we'll go over that next week. So we're about a third of the way done with our CPC review PowerPoint, and hopefully we'll see you guys next week. If you have any questions in the meantime, please reach out to us. And if not, then happy coding. You guys are doing great, and I'll talk to you soon. I'll leave it open in case there's any questions. You can just chat them to me.